Throughout cinematic history, there have been major creations that have revolutionized filmmaking. From silent monochrome to color and sound, from analog to digital, films have progressed to becoming an extraordinary format of storytelling. And one massive aspect of modern movies is the use of visual effects, finding an early ground with practical effects and eventually progressing to computer-generated imagery. Many modern films rely on VFX to tell stories that they otherwise wouldn't be able to. Whether it's transporting you to another planet, creating characters or creatures that are bound to the realm of fiction, or even just adding or removing objects from a scene, computer graphics have done a lot for cinema. However, it feels that as of recent, many studios have resorted to using it as a brace to fix problems with their films, rather than use it to add or improve them. So what caused CGI to go from a profound new way to explore narratives to becoming a borderline blight on cinema? And how can we fix it?
To see how we got here, we need to go back to the origins of computer graphics in film. Computer-generated imagery, or CGI, dates back all the way to the 50s. However, it wasn't until the 60s where the technology began to be invested in. In 1962, a man by the name of Ivan Sutherland created Sketchpad interactive software, which pioneered not just many technologies, but human-computer interaction in general. It was the first program to contain a graphical user interface and was the ancestor to CAD. A few years later, the University of Utah opened the very first CG department, and not too long after that, Sutherland partnered with David Evans to create the first CG company.
While the first film to use CGI was 1973's Westworld, written and directed by Michael Crichton, 1975 was the year that really began to shape CG in film, as George Lucas founded a small company called Industrial Light and Magic. ILM came out swinging by providing VFX for Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope. The film incorporated the use of CGI in the Death Star sequence, although that was done outside of ILM at the time. That wouldn't be an issue, however, as they had established themselves as an industry-leading VFX company. ILM would go on to produce the very first CG image for 1982's Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. But there would be a breakthrough for CGI in films that same year: Tron.
To say Tron reinvented CGI in cinema would be an understatement. Tron was the first feature-length film to utilize extensive use of 3D CG. The team behind the graphics had numerous hardships, such as having to manually input the code for the computers to render, and were unable to see the results until it was finished rendering, which could take days to complete. If something went wrong, that was time they had lost, and they would have to start back from scratch. But their hard work paid off, and it paved the road for motion pictures to add CGI to their toolkit of filmmaking techniques. It led to films such as 1985's Young Sherlock Holmes, which used it to create the first all-CGI character in a movie, 1986's Flight of the Navigator, where CGI was used to create the spaceship, and 1991's Terminator 2: Judgment Day, where the effects for the T-1000 were created with computers. Although, most will likely attribute their first experience with realistic CGI to
CGI exploded in the mid to late 90s and began to become commonplace in films. From movies like Toy Story that solely utilized computer animation as a medium, to films like The Matrix, which created the bullet time effect with the help of machines. And as the graphics began to get better, so did the technology. Motion capture and stagecraft have allowed for actors to be able to interact with characters and environments in a realistic fashion. Modern advances in computer hardware have allowed for real-time rendering and ray tracing, and for indie filmmakers to harness the power of CGI to tell their stories. We've come a long way since then, so why does it feel like we've regressed?
You could argue that CGI has gotten worse over the years, but that's far from the case. If anything, the graphics we can create with modern technology can far surpass anything that has come before it. What has changed, however, is the perspective CGI is viewed from. Because it has gotten easier than ever to add CGI to films, the studios and filmmakers creating the blockbuster movies you see in theaters find the prospect of using it in their films to be tantalizing. This has shifted the landscape of filmmaking so dramatically that instead of using CGI to help showcase their vision is being shaped around the ability to use CGI. While this can work when done well, oftentimes films will fall flat because the studios and filmmakers using it don't understand CGI. It's a tool that should be used to flesh out what is currently there, but many modern films are using it as a crutch to mask poor filmmaking.
Considering just how widespread of an issue the repercussions of CGI are on modern cinema, how should we go about fixing it? For starters, not every film needs to have CGI. Just because you can use CGI or because it will fit in the budget, doesn't mean that you should use it. CGI has become so oversaturated in cinema that it's the butt of many jokes, and for good reason. There are plenty of times that studios will use CGI just because they find it an easier solution to their problem. Believe it or not, you can often get a better result than CGI by finding a way to recreate the effect you are looking for practically, allowing for a more realistic result that the actors will be able to react to. Practical effects still have a use, and can deliver a better experience for the audience that studios will often ignore because they can, quote, fix it in post.
Well, fix it in post.
So, when should a film use CGI? Because computer-generated imagery is only as good as you will allow it to be, it needs to be given time and effort to deliver an end product that seems realistic. When you take shortcuts like modern films tend to, you get poor or downright bad end results. If a film can't afford to have time and effort poured into the CGI the studios and filmmakers want, then it shouldn't use that much CGI. That could also be a sign of other areas in the production suffering, such as awful writing calling for the use of massive intergalactic time-traveling fight scene that offers no other outlet to create that effect, or poor pre-production that ignored the aspect of practical effects. Filmmakers should also understand CGI's strengths and weaknesses. Environments and effects like simulations are a great use of CGI, as they can tend to look realistic with relative ease. However, characters and faces tend to be sore spots for CGI, since we as humans are adapted to know what faces should look like. So when something makes a face or character not look that way, it can be very off-putting. CGI can also be coupled with the use of practical effects to achieve an end result that plays to both forms' strengths, allowing for the final film to have the best visual effects it can.